Welcome to the 34th Annual Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series presented by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. The key to getting the most out of the seminar series is to listen to the small things, the subtle adjustments our faculty teams adhere to when the fishing might be tough or they're trying to target trophy game fish. That's what we call the gold nuggets of the seminar series. So come with me, let's get right to it and join, in progress, the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series.
Coming to you from the IGFA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, it's the 34th Annual Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series, brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Now, here's George Poveromo.
Welcome to Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series presented by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. We're going to jump right into the redfish session. And I have a very distinguished panel, which I feel I might be acting more as a referee than a consultant with this group over here. We've got the individual right to my left is a man, they call him Crazy. His name is Crazy Alberto Need. Crazy because he gave up a successful job to pursue fishing as his livelihood. From parts unknown. He fishes from the New England area all down through Florida. From North Carolina, the Wilmington area, that's Captain Jod Owens. And from the Tampa area, the one, the only, Captain Mike Goodwine, one of Tampa's premier snook and redfish authorities. So it's a very distinguished redfish panel to jump into. And Jod, out in North Carolina, what are some of the areas that you might start looking that's going to attract redfish? And I'm talking about habitat. Does moving water make a difference? Fill me in here.
For me, George, moving water is extremely important, always moving water. In the Carolinas, we have lots of beautiful marsh grass lines, and everything looks good. The big difference is going to be those places where you find that moving water, but then that structure. Oyster rocks, hard rock drops, anywhere a creek turns, you got that structure that's going to be fish are going to be on those edges where the bait hangs out. And for me, I have customers ask all the time, everything looks good. And then I'll show them those oyster rocks and those drop-offs, but you got to have that water moving through there too. Comes together, you're usually going to find those redfish.
Very good. And Mike, let's sort of revert this back to Florida here, where we're used to fishing mangroves and this and that. Is there a way to read mangroves knowing that they would hold redfish? In other words, if you look at a mangrove estuary at a low tide, do you tend to find the ones with maybe the deeper ruts or channels in them might be more productive?
I like to go out on low tide when the water's down below the mangroves where I could see what's under the mangroves. And all the mangroves will have oysters on them. And I can pretty much tell my clients, once that water get over the oysters in the mangroves and we got a pocket, those fish will come in with the tide and get up under those mangroves and use it as an ambush spot. And they have one little area they'll stay. You got to get that bait right in that area or you ain't going to catch it.
And I'm going to hold you to that one little area. Well, give us an idea what that one little area is like. Is it a deeper pocket among the oysters? I mean, this is where you guys really shine because it comes down to these little things that you're doing. And you just sort of glossed over that. I mean, you know it.
Yeah.
But describe that so an average redfish angler could look for things like this and help their catch.
Once the water get up and touch the mangroves, you're going to have little pockets up under the mangroves. So what you do is, I like to pitch it up under the mangroves. I put a split shot on a 1/0 hook, put a shrimp on there, or whatever you want to use, and you put it in there, and those fish are sitting right in that pocket. And I'm saying, they won't touch it unless you get it directly in there. And so you just got to look for those perfect holes in the mangroves. So I just tell people, keep pitching bushes till you find that burning bush. I call it a burning bush because you'll catch red after red. It's on fire. Yeah.
Very, very good. Alberto, you fished basically all geographical areas here. And you listen to John talk about areas to dial it in, Mike too. What could you offer to our audience to try to get them in an area that holds redfish?
It's very simple, actually. You got to know what their kitchen is. If you know what the kitchen is, you know, that's their feeding zone. You got to know what the knives are because it's very heavy structure. It's all bottom line structure. If you don't know what the structure is, if there's an open area, but they're spot on. Moving water, cover, and got to know when is the optimum window.
And I'm getting the consensus that it's more of a hard top of a bottom than say your sea trouts would be more over grasses and it's not the redfish more hard type bottom. Now I'm going to grill you because you said something very intriguing. You said that optimum time or that perfect window. So I'm going to get, what is that perfect window?
There's two kind of windows. One is for the regular person who likes to fish in the daytime. And I also love to fish the non-human hours where people are sleeping and dreaming about their fish. I'm actually catching the dream fish. So it's that magical window where water, you have to have moving water, all right? But there is a transitional period where you understand where these fish are going to going from point A to point B. Is one highway to another highway.
Okay.
So it's, for the most part, it's on a turning tide. And if you would break it down, it's probably within an hour and a half near that slack water phase.
Okay, so you're talking changing the tides pretty
Yes.
much,
Yes.
coming out of one and then going into one.
Yes.
In that optimum tide.
And there's the aggressive fish. The aggressive fish feed on moving fast water. The bigger, I call it the bowzilla, if you will. Those are the ones that are very stealthy and they don't like a lot of commotion, a lot of activity. So you go there at nighttime, you plug them out.
See, the perfect window for me is all day because when I'm home, my old lady's trying to get me to do something. So I stay out there all day. You know, the perfect window for me is all day. Because if I'm home,
and we're going to leave to a commercial break on that domestic note. but when we come back, I'm going to sort of, I think, be a referee here because we're going to talk about catching redfish, artificials versus live bait. I know that's going to be a fiery conversation. So we'll be right back from word from our sponsors.
The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series is brought to you by Simrad. Go with Simrad and go with confidence. Penn, let the battle begin. SiriusXM Marine, weather, fish mapping, and entertainment for anglers. Mercury Outboards, go boldly. Angle, portable fridge freezers and high-performance coolers. George will be right back. Welcome back to the 34th Annual Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the IGFA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Let's get right back to George.
Welcome back to the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series presented by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. We're in the teeth of a discussion on catching more and larger redfish, and it's just about to get really heated up here because we're going to discuss the merits of catching them on artificials versus live baits. And Mike, I'm going to start off with you. Let me get your answer. You're a live bait individual, and why do you spend so much time live baiting for redfish? Yes, it's a good way to catch them rather than trying to finesse them on artificials. What's your take?
When I go fishing to catch fish. I ain't trying to prove nothing. All I want to do is catch the fish. So all that jerking and twitching, you know, I don't play them games. So I know the redfish, they feed off the bottom. I want to get the stinkiest bait I could put on my rod, sling it out there, put it in the rod holder, which I call Rodney. I just put the rod in Rodney, sick bite, crack me a cold, and then wait.
Wait.
When that rod goes off, I know I got a fish.
Hold it.
You know.
So in other words, you're a chunker.
Yeah, I'll chunk all day.
You're a chunker. You don't use artificial at all.
Yeah.
Really?
So I'm trying to catch fish. I ain't trying to prove a point. That's just it. You know.
Well, I'm actually an opportunistic fisherman. You know, I love artificial lures. It's all about the casting and feeling the thump. If you don't feel the thump, that you're not going to get the excitement. But under normal circumstances, that's ideal if the weather and the water clarity is good. That's artificial. But when the water is dirty, I got to play dirty exactly what Mike
See, I
said.
don't
I
have
would
to
do the
feel
other
the
way
thump
around.
to get the excitement, though. When that rod bent over, that's the excitement for me. When the rod bent over, it's on.
All right, John, you got to help me out here. You're in the middle here between the live and the dead bait theories.
And I'm in the middle because I do artificial and live bait.
That's why you're there.
But I agree. It's going to be water quality, water situations, depth. North Carolina, we catch drum in shallow water in 2 to 3 foot.
Well, give me up to the water quality. When would the water quality be more productive to use artificials versus live bait?
Better visibility, better clarity.
So that's when you're talking about using artificials when it's clear.
Clear, yep.
All
So,
right.
you
See,
know,
I thought it would have been the opposite, but it's,
No.
both you said the clear water
Not
is the
only
best.
clear water, but at the same time, you have to have, fish have a couple of factors, feeding factors.
Yeah.
You have the sense of smell, they have a sense of vibration, and also, visual. So if you have any artificial lure that has internal rattling system, if you will, all right, that works. Bright colors and dirty water conditions, that gets their attention. And then if the water's dirty, you play dirty like he
Yes,
does.
if the water dirty, you ain't got to worry about none of that because they're going to smell it and they're going to go to it.
I
That's
agree.
just it.
But I'd like to challenge you on that because it's all about freshness. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it depends on, yeah.
So you mean to tell me you're going to use a bait that is maybe like 2 or 3 weeks or a month old?
But the stinkier, the better.
Oh my God.
For redfish,
For
huh?
redfish.
All right. Well, let me ask you a question. Let me dial in more on the artificials. The times that I've done redfish, I like to get them on top water.
Oh, yeah.
Rapala skitterwalk's been my favorite. Seems the bone color is always really good. And I like to also match it up to the most abundant bait in the area as well. Not that they would have, have key eyesight to see it, but I love the top water. And then, John, working at top water, give me the subtleties. I mean, it sounds basic. You throw the top water and you work it, but for redfish, is it a fast, tight retrieve or more broader, slower? What are the right subtleties in working at top water for redfish?
For me, topwater, like a walk the dog lure, skitter walk kind of such. That's what I use. I'm not real crazy about color, redhead, white body, bone. But the most important thing is presentation, action. And that side-to-side action, I tell my customers and my anglers that I want more side-to-side action than forward action. That lure snakes through the water, they'll take shots at it. Sometimes they just don't commit to it. But when that lure is, just taking your time low and slow, it drives them crazy.
Very cool. All right, Mike, let's get to the brass tacks here. You're a live bait individual. What do you use in terms of the pound test leader? Is there a certain length that you're using, type of hook? How do you hook the baits? Now, we fished together before, and we'll talk about that a little bit here, but before you throw that live bait out, you physically bite the tail off the thing and then throw it up. So before we get to the gruesome part, let's talk about the terminal rig. What is an ideal rig to live bait with reds when you're pitching?
So when I'm fishing for redfish, or I'm fishing with somebody new, the first thing I'll do is look at the setup they're using. And 9 times out of 10, they're always using too big of a hook or line or whatever else. So they'll show up on the flats trying to catch a redfish with a 5 or 6 aught hook.
That's too big even for
Way
sailfish.
too big. I use a 1-aught hook. That's
So
all you
hold
need
that up
right
there.
there.
So
This
you're
little
using
tiny hook.
that tiny hook.
Little tiny circle hook to get the job done.
And you're catching big bull reds.
Yes.
And that hook
well,
is
when
holding?
when I get into the real big ones, I gotta go to like a 3 or 4, but
All right.
anywhere from 18 to 30, this hook could get it done. It looks small, but I can stick this hook in any yard right now and drag y'all around the stage. So don't let the size fool you.
Very, very good. And real quickly, what pound test leader? How long?
25-pound leader, and I don't get into the fluoro or
Really?
mono. I don't. Yes.
All right. Well, hold that thought, because that's very intriguing. Because as you get so stealth-like in our fisheries, fluorocarbon versus mono, I want to hit on that note here. But first, we have to have a word from our sponsors. We'll be right back with the Saltwater Sports and Seminar Series, and we'll pick this increasingly exciting topic up.
The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series is brought to you by Rapala, your best shot at a world record. Suffix, always use the best line. VMC, your expert in hooks. Williamson Lures, for the pelagic playground. Starbright, blending technology with performance since 1973. George will be right back. Welcome back to the 34th Annual Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the IGFA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Let's get right back to George.
Welcome back to the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series presented by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Now, Mike, I want to have this conversation with you. Fluorocarbon has a refractive index that's nearly identical to that of water, which means it's nearly invisible underwater. It's been a big selling point for redfish, especially, or all fishes in clear water. It makes it difficult for them to see. But you're bucking tradition, you're old school nylon monofilament leader. Why?
Well, for me, it's whichever one is on sale. I buy the cheapest one. I personally don't think when a redfish go up to eat that bait, he look behind the hook and be like, oh, that's fluoro or that's mono. He's coming there to eat it.
Very, very intriguing. So going back to the small hook, and what was it, 25-pound leader test?
25-pound leader and 10-pound braid. I go with 10-pound braid for you could cast it farther. So.
Okay, and the small hook gives the advantage of that fish a little more action, but then again, you sort of diminish the action by biting the tail off the bait.
Yes.
What's your take with there?
So I'm trying to get, the key element is smell. I think redfish go for smell. So when you bite the tail off of it, they bleed in the water and they smell it. Plus, also, I like to bite the tail off it. If you ever using white bait or pilchards or whatever you want to call it in the area you're using, when you cast it out there, how many times have you cast it out there and be sitting, waiting on the bite, and then you look down and your bait sitting right beside the boat looking at you? He's trying to get back in the boat because he don't want to get ate. So if you take his tail off, he can't run. So he just sit there and do circles until something come and eat him. So, and biting the tail off ain't so bad. You just gotta put your hand over the poop hole, make sure for when you bite it, it don't get on you, and you good. So.
All right, Alberto, I'm going to rely on you to get me out of here. Now, here's another one. I'd probably start another fire here. You saw the tiny hook Mike uses, and you're pulling out something
where he comes
we
from,
use for Goliath
where I
grouper.
come from, I use hook this size.
Well, you're looking for the big bull reds.
I'm looking for the
with
big
that.
bull red.
All right, so
did you get that, Mike? Mm-hmm. Okay, just want to double check because your number 3 hook versus this 10-odd hook is tremendous. Okay, and I do use fluorocarbon because we did talk about, it's about the kitchen, it's about knowing where the knives are, hence sharp ledges, oyster beds, barnacles, fish pilings, and so forth. Because for the better part, I like fluorocarbon not because of the properties of invisible, but it has a more abrasion resistant. And for the better part also is that this line actually
All right,
sinks.
so let's take a look at the brass tacks. Let's talk about this rig itself. Okay. You've got your hook. What pound test leader? And I can see we come to a swivel here.
Okay, well, basically, what you have here is 80-pound fluorocarbon, and depending on the area, that actually dictates what pound test I'm going to be using. Okay. And because I use fish from the shoreline, I need distance. So something this short with an egg sinker or a fish finder rig will allow me to cast great distance, and I also never, dead bait, or I always hold on to my rod.
So you're always holding. You're never putting it on the rod holder.
Because I fish a very narrow window.
And the way you looked at Mike,
right.
you're telling me you're doing the exact opposite. I read that.
Well, of course, because this hook will cross the fish's eye.
Okay.
Alberto does not know Rodney.
No,
he does not know Rodney.
Alberto,
But if you got a good rod that's sensitive, like my rods are so good when it's sitting in the rod holder.
No.
Listen, my rod is so good when it's sitting in the rod holder. If a fish fart by the line, I'll see it jerk. So I don't need to hold on to it if I can feel it. Just put it in the rod holder.
Well, very good. Let's circle back here. Like I said, I'm more of a referee. And John, I'm going to get to you in a second. I want you to be thinking, coming back to the Alberto, is you're using what? Live bait on there, using chunk bait with this rig? What are the subtleties in fishing it?
The subtlety is big fish equates to big bait.
Yeah.
It could be a mullet, it could be a big muhara, it could be a pogie, which is, Manhattan, and it's a big bait fish. Mm-hmm. So compared to a bait fish this size, and a hook this small, you got to cross their eyes with this. So I like fresh. Did you get that? Fresh. Not the 2 or 3 weeks old, but, and I soak it. If I'm going to soak it, I soak it no more than 5 minutes.
10 to 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes soaking.
Right,
now, and again, I want to hit on the subtleties. You've got the sinker, so whatever bait you're using, the big bull mullet, hippopotamus, whatever you're sitting here talking about, but when you have that sinker and this bait is on the bottom, okay, obviously there's some moving water involved, and you give it 5 to 10 minutes to soak. What are you doing? What are the subtleties? Are you feeling the sinker? Do you feel it rolling? Do you open the bail? What are the subtleties to make sure you're where it needs to be?
When I make that cast, it lands, all right? And then I'll let it sit, and I drag it until I feel some kind of a structure.
I got you.
And I let it sit. And I always have it on the bait caster and on the free spool. Because with the braid line, with a long shock leader, all right, you can actually feel the big fish coming near, they swim around your line, and then they'll pick it up, and instantly, I don't let the rod sit.
Because you're finessing it.
Oh, it's all finesse, and because it's a narrow window, and those big fish, by the way, they do investigate big bait.
You just made a good point. So I tell my clients, don't move the bait, because if they holding it, they sitting around, and the bait is just steady moving around. It'd be like if you went to eat a piece of steak and it moved on the plate, you're going to jump back.
The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series is brought to you by Columbia Sportswear. Stay cool and protected while fishing. Calcutta Outdoors. Hard-working outdoor gear. JL Audio. Ahead of the curve. ACR. Building survival products since 1956. Florida Keys and Key West. Visit FLAkeys.com. George will be right back. Welcome back to the final installment of the 34th Annual Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series, brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Let's get right back to George.
All right, coming off the culinary art over here with Mike and the steak, John, in the closing 30 seconds we have here, what would be your 3 most crucial tactics or techniques or tips for catching redfish, be it on lures or live bait?
I'd say number 1 would be early mornings, low light, topwater fishing, 2 to 3 foot of water, shallow waters, clear waters. I'd say the second thing would be a pop and a rattling cork in the same situations, but when the sun's up a little higher. And then last but not least, I swear a good old Carolina rig with a fresh piece of menhaden on it will catch some redfish.
And there you go. What a perfect way to end this session. You know, you were the buffer between the live bait artist and the artificial lure, and it made my refereeing job a lot easier. I appreciate that, and that's the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series Redfish panel. We'll be coming back with yet another exciting topic. Well, there you have it, this week's Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series. Now, adhering to Saltwater Sportsman Seminar Series tradition, you still have chances to win door prize drawings. Simply go to nationalseminarseries.com, log on to the door prize page, just give us your name, phone number, and an email address, and at the conclusion of the airing of the series in December, we will draw for a number of excellent door prizes. Get right to it. We'll see you on the next episode of the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series.